Legendary names in Sabres history connected forever. The great Rick Jeanneret talking Dominik Hasek, and Marty, you and I being joined by two more that are synonymous with the franchise on this day where we reflect on the life of Rick Jeanneret. Rip Simonick, longtime equipment manager for the team. He's known RJ almost your entire life, I think, and Danny Gare with us right now. Gentlemen, thank you. This is an incredibly hard day for all of us, but Danny, I know for you, it's a long history with a man who had a big role in the soundtrack of your career.
Yeah, a sad day in Saberland, Duffer, and my condolences obviously go out to Sandra, his wife, and family. RJ was a special man, and I look back at playing my career and getting him to call with him on radio and television, and enjoy his fantastic, magical calls. And then after I retired from broadcasting, I got to watch it on TV. And what better thing as a fan to follow, iconic individual like him and a great friend.
Rip, when did you meet him?
Well, RJ, he had worked with the Buffalo Bisons in the American Hockey League. I was a young boy, 16 years old, and I got to befriend him. And when he was signed up for the Sabres, I was still going to college. And I decided, forget college, go to work for the Sabres. And we became long, forever friends. My heart is broken. It was very tough the last couple of years to watch RJ decline physically, mentally, sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Knew every player, every team. And one thing for sure, and Danny can tell you, Marty, you can tell, Duff, when you were on the road with RJ, right to the first pub, NHL Network or Hockey Night Canada before NHL Network. So he knew every player. He knew all the lines. He knew everything. And his notebook was right between his ears. He was a very intelligent announcer.
Yeah, Ripper, I know as a player you took care of us, right? We were high maintenance, high priced hockey players, and you took care of us, especially the goalies. But did RJ ever needed things from you? Did he ever ask, hey, Ripper, I need this, Ripper, I need that? Like, was there that relationship as you, the head equipment manager with the players, but also a guy that helped RJ with whatever he needed?
Well, one thing about RJ, when it came to being in the public and with the players and with the management, he was always like, this is good, this is fine. We're going to have a beer blast. You want to come over? Definitely, I'll be there. But on the way back home on a plane, he would grumble all the way. But it was a loving grumble. You guys know that. But there's a lot of things that the guy was like, he could easily get into your heart and stay there.
Yeah.
Danny,
what do you remember? Like early on, what do you recall? It was quite a time for you jumping into a very good team, RJ very early on, witnessing this very good team.
Well, when you look at the Sabres broadcasters, play-by-play, obviously two Hall of Famers. First one was Ted Darling, and then RJ. He just picked up right where Ted left off and continued his amazing calls and a little different. One of the things with RJ that I recall when his voice was like Foster Hewitt. It was a classic hockey voice. And one of the things that when he saw, like Rip said, the game, his preparation obviously was between his ears. He could do a New York Times crossword puzzle in about a half an hour. And those things aren't easy. I tried them. But that's how intelligent he was. But his inflection was amazing. That's the thing that got me always was when the team started to go towards a goal, you could see the rise in his inflection, his voice, and how it just increased and got better and better. And then the fantastic calls if the goal was scored. There's so many of his amazing calls.
Danny, you did like me. You were a player first, so he called you as a player, and then you got to work with him. I was so intimidated when I first started working because of RJ. But then he has a way he had a way to make cracks at you a little bit to make you feel comfortable. I'll just read you a text he sent me.
Yeah.
Last year, he says, you know what? You're really getting a lot better. The only trouble is you're also looking old. So that was RJ in a nutshell. Like he had a way to make you feel so comfortable. Do you remember him like kind of initiating you a little bit after you played and then starting with the broadcast?
Well, I tell this story, Marty, and I think you guys may have heard it, but I'll give the viewers and listeners a little background. And when I started on radio with him after I retired, and we went to the MSG. It was just at the start of the season, Madison Square Gardens, and they hadn't finished the broadcast booth yet. They were still doing some renovations on it. So they put us in the gallery gods, which you know where they are, in the blue section, and they had a table with 4 or 5 seats, regular seats, and we had this engineer, and we had a little monitor, and I've got all these notes and papers. I'm trying to get all the stats and prepare for the game, and he's just got the lineup blown up about 10 times because he couldn't see them. So as the game goes on, one of my papers fell down between the seats. So I go to pick it up, and the Sabres scored. So luckily for me, I have a monitor sitting there next to me, and I'm going, as the replay goes on, I go, now watch how Anderchuk gets the puck, and watch how he looks for Howardchuk, and Howardchuk does an excellent job in seeing Mogilny. Look how he gets the puck to the net and looks for the top shelf. So he's there like this. He's listening to me, and we're on radio, right?
Yeah.
He's going, they can't see. They can't see. Just subtly saying it to me, little. Okay, lesson learned.
When did your friendship take you into a different sporting venue as far as the horses are concerned, and how much did you hang out, Ripper, with RJ on the off days?
Well, he always was prepared.
Mhm.
Before we even went on a road trip, he goes, we know we're going to Florida, so we could always go to Gulfstream. We know you're going to California. Could always go to Del Mar. But he was always there, never interfered with my job. I never interfered with his job.
Yeah.
Good handicapper, good bettor. And you know what? Had to have a few beer.
Yeah.
Not beers, beer. I got to have a beer. We have to have a beer after the game. So, I mean, these guys know that, but true blue, solid man to befriend.
Yeah.
There wasn't probably 10 people in sports that I've been closer to than Rick Jeanneret.
Danny, what about the shenanigans? And we did a montage a few years ago of RJ on Halloween, right? Dressed up at Frankenstein, or at Christmas and Santa Claus, and then just all of that. He was so comfortable within himself to not take himself so seriously. Like, that was probably, to me, something that I have learned so much, that it doesn't matter if you're doing NHL or if you're just calling a peewee hockey game. Like, you have to take it. It's a game. Have fun with it. Did that help you in being a broadcaster as well?
Obviously, he just seemed to be at ease at doing what he did. And I can remember another story that I was one of 2 other people on this famous call at the old auditorium. And it was when Pat LaFontaine was traded. It was a radio game only. We were doing radio still, I should say. And we're up in this little box in the auditorium, myself and Barry Butel. And Patty got traded for Pierre Turgeon. And when Patty scored his first goal as a Sabre, Rick goes like this, like puts his hand like, shut the up, And I was like, I've never seen this before. I've never seen this. Like, what's he doing? And then out of his mouth comes, oh, la, 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 la. I almost fell out of the friggin' booth. It was crazy. It was like the first time he ever did it. I was fortunate to be one of the persons there when he did it. But he was just, I often, asked him, I said, do you think of these things before you say them? And he says, a few times, but not a lot. He said, they they just came to him. I mean, that Mayday, you know, a number of the calls, the great iconic calls that he had.
Mhm.
Rip, can you give us a sense of, even in recent years, how players reacted behind the scenes, day of a game, prior to the game? You know, RJ would often be down event level around the room. How do you describe their respect for him and what you saw and how they interacted with him?
Well, obviously, Danny and Marty were around him a long time ago. And as the players got younger, RJ and myself got older, but RJ always made himself available. I mean, a lot of these guys that came in, especially the last 5-6 years, the kids knew the calls, they knew him. And you know what? He treated them all with respect. He was very, very friendly to them. You know, he very, very well wished every guy there, whether they were a superstar, whether they were a fourth liner, third string goalie, didn't make any difference. One thing that RJ never, ever did, no matter what your status was on a team, he always treated the players with respect. And he expected that in return, which obviously all of us here respected him very well.
I think respect is a word that we need to remember, because there was games where I was terrible, and RJ would say something. It was respectful, but it was true. Like, Marty's not having his best night, but it's respectful and it's true. Danny, how hard was that how hard is it for a broadcaster to walk that line? Like, to be able to show respect, but also be authentic and let the fans know that it's a good game or it's a bad game.
Yeah, I mean, you know, RJ certainly, you know, 51 years with the Sabres. You could call him a homer, you know, you could call him a guy that, you know, understood, you know, who paid him, but he always knew if there was an issue or a problem where the team wasn't playing well. I've said this before. I said the Sabres haven't made the playoffs in 12 years. The last 10 years, he's been their most valuable player because of keeping people around, because of the followings that he has. I mean, by far, he has been the man that's kept the fans, the people. I mean, with his calls and his fun-loving way, everything he did on the broadcast was truly a professional.
Want one last word or a few words?
Well,
RJ?
One thing that I really enjoyed, one of my saddest moments, other than today or yesterday when he passed, was I never got to hear his calls live. I was always on the bench. I was always in the locker room. I was either doing something, but for sure, I listened to every one of his calls after the game, on the plane, on the replays. And one thing about RJ, he, like you said, he makes you comfortable. He banters back and forth with Rob Ray. I don't know if Rob Ray would even challenge him, because RJ would kick his butt. So we know that. So, but we have to respect what he stood for and why he stood for it.
Danny?
Well, like Rip said, he never heard live. I was fortunate to work with him live. I think the one thing with RJ was, I never got to be a color analyst like Harry Neal or Jim Lorentz and Razor. So I got to in his last call a couple years ago, I got to work with him as a color analyst next to him, and it was one of the thrills of my life for a period. And I also voiced over his video when he got his number or his name retired, which was richly deserved. So, I mean, he was just a good man. He always, gave to the community. He'd come to my golf tournament just to call him up. Yeah, I'll be there. Anything with charity work, he was around. He was always easy and approachable. I think when you look at You know, the thing that Kevin Adams mentioned in his response was not only was, and I thought it was a great line, he goes, not only was he the voice of the Sabres, but he was the voice of the city. And, you know, he certainly, he did that so well for so many years. And I'm glad to call him, as Rip said, a friend. They all are his friend. And rest in peace, RJ.
Danny, Rip, thank you so much. It's been an honor to share this time, a time we didn't want to have together, but it's made better by your presence. And thank you again for being here today.
Okay, rest in peace. I'll be on your tombstone, RJ. Remember I told you that a lot of times.